Guess what, everybody? It's me! And it's time for another episode of the American series. Roger Williams clung tightly to his horse's reins as he plodded along the 16 miles of makeshift roads down to Boston. He was bound for another trial before the General Court. His third trial in under 2 years. Most men would have taken the hint by now and shut their mouths. Most would have simply bowed to the wishes of the authorities to avoid personal trouble. But not Roger. He was a man of principle. Once he believed something was right, he was not willing to move off of it, no matter what that meant. This legal trial was not the only thing that had come against the preacher in these past few weeks. A terrible illness had struck him, and so serious had this illness been that for a time he had believed that his sickbed would be his deathbed. But God had seen fit to spare Roger, and by his grace he was here now, in the saddle and on the mend. Upon Roger's arrival in the Salem courtroom, the charges were read against him. And just what exactly were these diverse, new, and dangerous opinions, as the General Court so called them? I'll give them to you here, as they were written those many hundred years ago. First, that we have not our land by patent from the king, but that the natives are the true owners of it, and that we ought to repent of such receiving it by patent. Secondly, that it is not lawful to call a wicked person to swear, to pray, as being actions of God's worship. Thirdly, that it is not lawful to hear any of the ministers of the parish assemblies in England. Fourthly, that the civil magistrate's power extends only to the bodies and goods, and the outward state of men, etc. So, to put things in a bit more modern words, the General Court was first of all angry that Roger said that Massachusetts didn't belong to them, and that they should pay the Indians back for the land they had stolen. Secondly, that sinful people should not be part of church worship. Thirdly, that they should not listen to Anglican preachers since they were not part of that church. And last of all, that Roger said the government had no right to persecute people for what they thought and said about religion. The General Court sternly commanded Roger to recant, or else suffer the consequences. If you do not acknowledge what you said was wrong, they told him, we will banish you from our colony. It was then that an oddly familiar face appeared. You remember back from episode 2, that preacher, Thomas Hooker, that was traveling with Roger to the big meeting in Sempringham? Yeah. Well, this is him. Hooker tried to urge Roger to give up, but he may as well have tried to sail a ship against the wind. Roger wouldn't listen to him. The issues at stake were too big to give up for selfish comfort and security. He had watched the sufferings back in England. He knew all too well what happened when a government tried to control the hearts of men, and he wouldn't stand for it here. Was this not one of the great premises of this colony? Was this not supposed to be a haven for the persecuted? No, Roger told Hooker, and the court for that matter. No, he would not recant a word of what he had said. And so, the sentence of banishment was passed against the brave preacher of Salem. He had 6 weeks to leave. A petty mercy that, seeing as winter was on the doorstep, he still weakened from his illness, and his wife but recently delivered of their second child. And where was the little family to go? To go back to England was but to return to their former dangers. There was Virginia, but as a strictly Anglican colony, dissenters found little rest there either. The 6 weeks passed, then another 6 weeks, and now January found Roger happily at home in Salem, with Mary, little Mary, and his baby daughter, freeborn. The General Court had changed their minds, and said that they would allow Roger to stay in the colony just until spring, so long as he remained quiet. Publicly, Roger had done as they asked, but inside the rough walls of his home was another story. Friends still constantly came to talk with him about his radical ideas of toleration, and to hear him preach. The eyes and ears of the general court seemed everywhere, and it wasn't long before they caught wind of Roger's audacity. Was this preacher still continuing to spread his dangerous ideas right under their noses? How dare he? And even when they had let him stay longer, too. They held a meeting and decided they would put up with this no more. They were going to get rid of this troublemaker once and for all. A band of soldiers was got together and sent to Salem, with orders to arrest Mr. Williams and send him on a ship to England, to prison.